Hi and welcome. This video is going to be about getting image size right on export from Lightroom. I have covered this subject before in a previous video, but I realized I wasn't clear on certain points, especially PPI when it comes to printing. So let's get going. That's my crop dimensions. To see that, Command or Control J and make sure you got crop dimensions showing somewhere. So let's turn that off. Someone has asked me for a 900 by 900 pixel image as a JPEG. So I'm going to do an export for 900 pixels by 900 pixels as a JPEG. File, export, Command or Control Shift E. 900 by 900 pixels, resolution of 1. I'll untick that for now. JPEG, I'll talk about quality later. So it's got a resolution of 1 ppi, pixels per inch. If you've got pixels showing here, resolution here makes not the slightest bit of difference. It will put the metadata into the file, but it won't make any difference. Let's go and export this image the wrong way now. Export, and it's going to show up in my preview app, and if you're on Windows you should set it in post-processing to Windows Photo Viewer. Pixel width 900, pixel height 473, DPI or PPI as it should be, that's Apple's fault, is 1. Does it make any difference to the image? No, it doesn't. Command Q. So to get it done properly, this is the 900 by 900, I need to crop to that aspect ratio. So 900 by 900 is a 1:1 aspect ratio. R on my keyboard, there's my crop. Now if I can't work out the lowest divisible number, all you have to do is enter in the dimensions you want on export. So 900 by 900, we know that's 1:1, but Lightroom will do the math for us. Okay, it's now 1:1. Just play around with it a little bit to make it pretty. So return, Command or Control Shift E, or Shift Command or Control E. We'll bring up the export dialog box. 900 by 900, nothing's changed, resolution of 1. Let's make it 500 now, just to prove a point. JPEG sRGB, quality 70. Again, it's going to open up in preview, which is my photo viewer on a Mac. Command I. It's now 900 by 900. Notice the DPI or PPI as it should be is 500. It doesn't make one bit of difference in that export dialog box when you're using pixels. And I will explain more in a minute. So Command Q to get rid of that. Right, let's talk about print, or let's go for the export dialog box in a little bit more detail. Command Shift E. Now, I could quickly run through PSD and TIFF. What I will do, 16 bits or 8 bits. This is PSD is the Photoshop format. Obviously, the higher the bit depth, the bigger the file. Color space, sRGB means screen, red, green and blue. If you're going out to screen, that's the safest color space. You can use Adobe RGB 1998, but I don't recommend it because most of the time, most monitors can cope with sRGB and a lot of inkjet printers as well. But anyway, color space doesn't affect file size very much at all. So anyway, PSD, TIFF. If I put it on 8 bits, which would make it a smaller size, none, LZW and zip, they're both compression methods. I think zip is more aggressive than LZW, so I think that will make the smaller file. 16 bits, make it a larger file, you can zip it up. Color space doesn't make any difference. Transparency, that's the alpha channel if you've got a mask in the file. DNG, which is Adobe's proprietary RAW format. Full-size JPEG preview, obviously make it larger. Embed fast load data, will make it slightly larger, but it will load faster. Use lossy compression like JPEG's compression. It will make the image file significantly smaller. Embed original raw file. Well, it doesn't take much working out. That's going to make it pretty large. So original, or basically you haven't got any control anyway. So back to JPEG, because most of us will output at JPEG or JPG. Quality, the higher the quality, the bigger the file. Now, I will tell you that I've exported this particular image at 20 and it looked fine on the screen. There's going to be a link down below to an article by a chap who used to work for Adobe, who now lives in Japan. His name is Jeffrey Friedel. And basically, he's done an article on quality settings inside of Lightroom. It's not very complex, but it's a good read. And also, he's got a plugin which will allow you to export one image at 12 different JPEG quality settings plus one lossless TIFF. And you can compare the difference. And I can tell you, if you've got your own website, you should be crushing down your images to make them load faster. When I'm going out to Flickr or whatever, I don't really care. But when I'm going out to my own website, I should care more. And I've been using 70 because I think it's pretty fail safe. But there are people out there who say don't go below 80 if you care about your images. But I can tell you, if you're eyeballing it fine on the screen, and 20 works, then 20 works. And that will mean a significant reduction in the file size. Color space, as I said, it doesn't make any difference, but if you go into a screen, sRGB, screen RGB, red, green and blue is best. Any other screen, you might get away with Adobe RGB 1998, and ProPhoto RGB is massive and you won't get any benefits whatsoever. Go into a screen, that is. So if you're going out to the web, it's JPEG and sRGB. Limit file size. Now, let's say I've got everything right down here, width and height, etc. But I want to output it to Twitter, and they've told me my file size is too large. It needs to be under 2 megabytes. So I've limited my file size to 2000 kilobytes. And for social media, that's the way I often do it, if it spits my image out, because I can't be bothered to mess around with the quality settings. Because what happens now, Lightroom will decide the quality. If you mouse over, you'll see that turn up. So yeah, limit file size creates the highest quality JPEG that matches your requested file size. Right, resize to fit. If you don't tick this, that size there will turn up 3704 by 3704. But you can change the resolution. It should be grayed out as well, in my personal opinion, but you can add the metadata to the file. What I'm saying is this will not make the slightest bit of difference whatsoever. Whatever you put in there, if you've got pixels there or you've unticked resize to fit, it will put the metadata 500 ppi into the file or DPI or whatever, but it won't make the slightest bit of difference. Now, people who say you should use 72 ppi, well, that's fine because you can put what you like, but look at this as image size only. If you've got a 1024 by 768 screen and you give it a 1024 by 768 picture, guess what? It fills the screen up. If you've got an Apple iPhone 7, let's say, who's got such a high pixel density, it's probably got the same amount or more amount of pixels than your 1024 by 768 really old PC, that image is going to look very small on it. So the PPI does matter in the sense that, you know, there's more pixels per inch, so the image is going to be smaller on the screen. But putting any number here doesn't make any difference to the screen. In fact, the only thing that matters is size, but the relationship between PPI and print is important. I wish Adobe would put print resolution here and it would settle a lot of arguments. But, you know, some people say, oh no, it must be 72 PPI. Well, I've just proved I put 1 PPI, 500 PPI. It doesn't make any difference. I'm going to prove that a little bit more in a minute, but let's tick resize to fit. And we know now that 900 by 900, or, you know, getting the aspect ratio right is really important. If you don't get the aspect ratio right with the crop, this will always respect the longest edge. So if I've got 1024 in there, one edge, depending on whether it's a landscape mode or portrait mode image, will be respected. Simple as that. So let's talk inches and centimetres. Because I live in the UK, we should be using centimetres, but most of the English-speaking world still use inches. There's a few problems with rounding errors you get when you get inches decimalised, but we'll cover that in a minute. So here we go. Now, I'm going to put the resolution to 300. The reason I'm putting it to 300, that is seen as a benchmark for quality images. Now, most online print bureaus will say to you 300. But really, what it boils down to is the image size. So they don't want to confuse things. So I realise a lot of people don't understand this. So what I would say is don't play around with resolution here too much, because once you know your printer wants 300 ppi, put 300 in there. Once you know, let's say your inkjet printer connected to your system wants 240 ppi, put that in there. Do read up, do find out what they want. It's really important. Because you can resize an image here by changing the resolution, but I don't recommend it. In fact, if you go into Photoshop, you can definitely change the image size, playing around with the resolution, but that's not the normal way to do things. Now, I believe, and I could be wrong, that most printers do not care about what you've got in the file regards to PPI. All they care about is the image size. Now, it might be true of some printers, they might read the PPI information, but it still boils down to image size. That's the overriding thing. So if I go to an online print bureau, and I've actually asked my online print bureau, called the Print Space in London, on a very good bureau, can I use a lower PPI? They said no, because the printers actually print at 300 PPI. So what's the point? So stick with what your print bureau says or what your printer manual says. That's really important. So how do I prove this PPI business? Well, how do I know what size I'm going to get at 300 PPI? The clue is that figure there, or those two figures there. If you divide the 3704 by 300, you'll get the size in inches you're going to get. Now, I'm not going to work in centimetres at the moment. I'm going to stay with inches. In fact, I'm never going to work with centimetres because I don't want to confuse this too much. So let's get my calculator up. 3704 divided by 300 will give me a 12.346666 image. So it's roughly 12.35 inches, I would say, I'm going to get on that edge. As this is a square image, I'm going to get 12.34 or 35 by 12.35 inches. That's the way to find out what you're going to get in advance. So once you know that now, if I put in there 12.35 by 12.35, it shouldn't change the image size there too much, because I'm going to export here to preview as I have done before. So export, so it should keep the image roughly the same size. There might be a few rounding errors because I'm using decimalisation with inches. So here it is, 3705 at 300 ppi. So if you pull that away, it's 1 pixel out. It's made it 1 pixel larger. Now, the resizing is called interpolation. If you make an image larger or smaller, well, which Lightroom is, it's interpolating the image. So forget about the word. All it's doing is, as you make the image larger, it pulls the pixels apart and infills them automatically, decided for you. In Photoshop, you can make a decision about what type of interpolation you want, but with Lightroom, that's what happens. It's automatic, and it does a damn good job. So we've proved here, I'll get rid of that now, that, Command-Shift-E, that it's roughly 12 inches at 300 ppi. Now, as I said, if I played around with this, I can change the image size, but once you know what your printer needs, use that. If you want to print in draft mode, use the printer dialog box. When you go Control or Command or File Print, use the printer dialog box. Do not mess around with this too much. I would say that 300 would be absolutely fine. Now you think, oh, I'd like to mess around with PPI and make it 150. And, you know, it doesn't work like that. You really have to tie down your PPI, and then whatever you want in width and height in inches or centimetres you put in. So I now know if I double that size, which is roughly, what is it, 24.7, I think it is, 24.7, I'll put that in, roughly twice the size. I'm not very good at math, I have to excuse me. it's going to have to double the size of that image there. So it's going to be twice 3704 by 3704. Let's export it. I haven't changed the PPI. So it took its time because interpolation is taking place. 7410. So what's going on there? 3704, calculator, 3704, shift, and 2, 7408, and I've actually got 7410. So it's not far out, is it, guys? Couple of pixels out. That's all it is. So you get the idea. One more time, Command and Control Shift E. Let's make it 6 inches. Well, 12.35. I can't even be bothered. So let's say 6.3. That'll do. By 6.3. Don't forget, you've got to respect the aspect ratio. You must have the aspect ratio right on the crop before you go this far. So that's 6.3. That's just a guess. And by the way, don't enlarge. If you tick that, it won't enlarge the file. Simple as that. I can't think of a scenario when you might want to do that, but there might be. It's a bell and whistle that Adobe are giving you, but don't tick it unless you really have to. So 6.3, let's export it and see what it does. Interpolation will take place. It has to resize the image. So there will be a loss of quality, whether you make it smaller or larger. Right, Command I, it's made it 1890. So if I go to calculator and 3704 divided by 2, it's 1852, and I come here, it's 1890. So it's about 40 odd pixels out. But you get the idea, guys. That's what's happening. It's interpolation. So just to reiterate, when you do a crop or when you want to export to a certain size, you've got to crop to that aspect ratio. When you're going to print, PPI matters. When you're going to screen, PPI doesn't matter at all, but it will put the metadata in the file, but it doesn't mean jack at all. All that matters to a screen is the size of the image and nothing else. But what you're saying with the export dialog box, you're saying, I want 300 pixels represented on 1 inch of paper. So obviously, if you want that, that size has got to meet it. There's a limit. And of course, we now know it's 12 odd inches as it stands there. But of course, if I change these widths and heights, it's going to change the image. Also, I quickly run through these. Dimensions, you can have it in inches as well. One edge will be respected. It's normally the longest edge we'll pick. So let's put, if I put 1024 by 7, I've got inches in there. Obviously, that's not going to work. I'm going to get a message, pixels. 1024 by 768. If it was a landscape image, that landscape mode, that would be respected. It's just agnostic. And so if you've got a portrait image, that edge will be respected down there. So it's quite simple, really. Long edge, I do find this useful sometimes, and I'll explain why. If you're going out to Facebook or whatever, and you like your crop, and Facebook are recommending a certain dimensions, what I will do is I will meet one dimension that my crop likes. Obviously with a landscape image, let's say it's 2408, I actually think it is, they recommend. So at least I'm not breaking any rules, because if I let Facebook actually resize my image, I'm going to lose quality. So what I'm doing is meeting one edge, so my image will look pretty good on most devices. The idea that they give you dimensions like that is because they know that it will probably meet most device requirements. There are so many different devices that can read images out there in terms of phones and tablets, etc. So they're trying to find a sort of one size, but one size doesn't fit all. So I'm quite happy to put in 2048 if I don't want my crop to be ruined. Short edge, pretty obvious again what it is. Megapixels, if you time that number by that number, that will equal the megapixels. So if you put something in there, it doesn't meet those two, you're going to make the image larger or smaller. Stock photo agencies will often say we want a minimum amount of megapixels or a maximum. If I've taken a shot with one of my old cameras from 6 years ago, it doesn't meet their requirements in terms of megapixels, I will change it here, but it will change the image size, providing you don't enlarge. And the last one is percentage. Obviously 200% means twice as large. And again, resolution doesn't mean anything. It will just put a bit of metadata into the file. One more time, PPI in this context does not matter on a screen. Not one bit. So when you go back to width and height, if you've got pixels here, that doesn't matter. And just to prove it, I will put out an image. Well, we know this is not going to work, but because the aspect ratio isn't right, but one edge will be respected at 1 PPI. Export. Well, it's respected because it's square. It's given me a 1024 by 1024. So both one edge has been respected twice because it was a square image. PPI or DPI, it should be PPI, that's Apple's fault, is 1. So there you go. PPI does not make any difference until you change that box to inches or centimeters. It's the same in Photoshop as well. This doesn't give you feedback, but what's happening in Photoshop is exactly the same. You're just seeing it on screen. What happens here, and it makes it difficult for me, is I have to use a program like Preview app, and I've got it showing up in post-processing here. So you might have to use Windows Photo Viewer. Once you've got the concept in your head, it's quite straightforward. If you're going to print, think like this. If you've got a 300 pixel by 300 pixel image, and you want to print at 300 PPI, it's going to be 1 inch by 1 inch. It's as simple as that. So once you start playing around with the inches here or centimeters, it's going to resize the file. That's called interpolation. It doesn't matter if it's making it smaller or larger. There will be some degradation of quality, some artifacting, probably hardly noticeable. Whilst I'm here, JPEG quality 70 is pretty fail-safe, but don't be frightened to experiment, especially if you need to crush down your file sizes for your own website, let's say. That's it, guys. I hope you found this informative. My last video was a little bit woolly on this respect, but now I know I'm definitely got it right, and I hope you got something from it. Thanks very much.